She stands just behind Erika Kirk at every public event. But who is Stacey Sheridan really? And why did Turning Point USA quietly funnel $2.7 million to companies she controls, making her both employee and vendor? The leaked documents suggest an inside network, one where missing financial statements, sudden leadership shifts, and astonishing cash flows left even Charlie Kirk himself in the dark. What was concealed, and why does the money trail lead straight to the woman now called Grifter-in-Chief? The real story begins with a single corporate filing that no one was supposed to notice. On July 19, 2022, a new name quietly appeared on the Delaware Division of Corporations Registry, Cloverstone Ventures LLC. The paperwork was simple, just a few pages filed with the state listing Stacey Sheridan as the sole officer and governor. No mission statement, no public explanation, just a line in the records that most people would never see. Yet that entry would become the foundation for one of Turning Point USA's most lucrative vendor relationships. Delaware's corporate laws make it easy for companies to keep their true owners hidden. Anyone searching for more details about Cloverstone would find only a registered agent's address and Sheridan's name. Nothing more. No board minutes, no list of investors, no details about the business itself. For an organization like Turning Point USA, which has faced questions about transparency before, the choice of Delaware for this LLC raises immediate questions. Why would a top fundraising executive need a private company on the side, especially one shielded by some of the nation's strongest privacy laws? The official record shows only that Sheridan had the power to act on Cloverstone's behalf from the very start. She signed as governor, giving herself full control over the company's operations and finances. There is no public record of any other officer, director, or member. In the world of nonprofit fundraising, this kind of arrangement is rare, and for donors and watchdogs, it is a red flag. The formation of Cloverstone Ventures LLC did not draw headlines or trigger any alarms at the time, but that single filing buried in Delaware's archives would soon become the first thread in a much larger story about money, influence, and the people trusted to safeguard millions in charitable donations. Turning Point USA's public tax filings reveal a striking pattern when the numbers are lined up year by year. In the fiscal year ending June 2022, Cloverstone Ventures, a limited liability company, appears on the organization's Form 990 as one of its top 5 contractors. The amount paid was $827,821, but that is not the full picture. The same year, Schedule G lists Cloverstone's fundraising gross receipts at $17,058,531, with $641,466 paid out for those efforts. The year before, the numbers are nearly as large, $16,334,200 in gross receipts and $505,293 paid. These are not isolated transactions. They represent a multi-year flow of money from Turning Point USA to a private company controlled solely by a senior executive. Cloverstone is not the only entity in this web. Lion Rock Ventures, another limited liability company, received $627,582 in fundraising payments from Turning Point USA in 2021, plus another $351,897 as a top contractor that same year. Again, the only officer listed for Lion Rock is Stacey Sheridan. When all payments to these two firms are added together, the total climbs past $2.7 million since 2018. And this is on top of a reported $180,000 salary paid directly to Sheridan by Turning Point USA in its 2018 fiscal year. The numbers reveal something more than just aggressive fundraising. They show a salaried executive collecting substantial commissions through companies she alone controls. Each year, the same names appear on both sides of the transaction: Sheridan as the officer for the limited liability companies, and as a top fundraising official for the nonprofit. These arrangements are rarely seen in organizations that depend on public trust. For donors, the pattern raises uncomfortable questions. Who approved these contracts? Were the board and leadership aware of the overlap? And how much oversight was there, if any, over the flow of millions in charitable funds to privately held companies tied to an insider? On September 2, 2025, an internal memo circulated through Turning Point USA's executive inboxes. Charlie Kirk, still at the helm, named fundraiser Justin Strife as chief operating officer and authorized him to lead a new initiative. The memo laid out a clear mandate: increase efficiency, cut costs, and unify the organization's goals under tighter metrics. Kirk's words left no room for doubt. He expected major changes, and he put Strife in charge of finding them. This move came after months of growing concern over the organization's financial practices. Insiders say he launched an audit because he was worried about missing funds and the lack of clear answers from the finance team. The urgency was unmistakable. 8 days later, Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10, 2025, before the audit could even begin. Almost immediately, the push for transparency ground to a halt. The audit was canceled without explanation, and the internal investigation vanished from the agenda. For donors and staff, the timing was impossible to ignore. In the weeks that followed, a new layer of secrecy settled over Turning Point USA's finances. 3 of the 4 required annual Form 990 filings for the organization's related entities went missing for fiscal year 2024. In past years, all 4 had been posted together, but now only the main organization's statement appeared, leaving a conspicuous gap in the public record. Buried in the documents that did surface, one transfer stood out. $8.56 million was sent to America's Turning Point, a shell company that shows no employees on record. The previous year, that entity reported $3.7 million in salaries and wages, while listing 0 employees. With so much money moving behind closed doors, and with key records missing, the effort to follow the money hit a wall. The pattern was clear. Oversight was being shut down at the very moment it was needed most. State Farm Stadium filled with more than 200,000 people on September 21st, 2025. The crowd included former President Trump, longtime donors, students, and activists from across the country. On stage, Erika Kirk stood at the center, newly appointed as both Chief Executive Officer and Board Chair of Turning Point USA. The board's decision came less than 1 week after the shooting, with a unanimous vote recorded in the organization's minutes. The speed of the transition left some supporters uneasy, but the public message was unity and resilience. Erika's first address as Chief Executive Officer promised that the group would outgrow even Charlie's wildest ambitions, pledging to support J.D. Vance's presidential campaign as a tribute to her husband's legacy. Beside Erika, Stacey Sheridan played a prominent role. She delivered a eulogy that focused less on loss and more on the future of the organization. Sheridan described her first meeting with Charlie Kirk at a donor summit, recalling how his naive audaciousness eventually won her over. She told the crowd that despite Charlie being her technical boss, she always saw him as a little brother. The language struck some as oddly familiar, echoing the same closeness she projected at other Turning Point USA events. For many watching, it was clear that Sheridan's influence had only grown stronger in the wake of the tragedy. Questions about stewardship and accountability were not new to Turning Point USA. 5 years earlier, a ProPublica investigation highlighted misleading fundraising claims, not independent audits, and compensation packages that ballooned as the organization's profile rose. Candace Owens, a former contributor, had gone public with her own doubts, calling out the lack of transparency around pay and bonuses. Now, with the group's founder gone and a new leadership team in place, those old warnings felt newly urgent. The sheer scale of the memorial, the rapid consolidation of power, and the organization's history of financial scrutiny combined to create an atmosphere thick with unanswered questions. Today, the real danger is not buried in leaked files. It is how quickly unverified claims can shape public trust. In a world flooded with conspiracy and misinformation, truth demands scrutiny, not blind belief. The biggest risk now is how easily fact and fiction blur. Stay curious and stay vigilant.